day. Well, in retrospect, I wish the Niners bye week was, yesterday. And once again, this is becoming a habit I don't like. We're bringing in the Athletics' Matt Barrows. It's not his fault, but he's got to once again come in and break down yet another loss, the third in the row for the San Francisco 49ers. Matt, good morning. And I'm wondering, since we're all around the same age bracket, if, as I asked Jason earlier, are you old enough to remember when the Niners blew out the Cowboys and were undefeated?
I am old enough to remember that. I happen to be living on the East Coast, so I don't have quite the detailed memory that maybe the West Coast version of me would have had.
Yeah, it was a different time. It was a different world back then. And now 3 in a row. Hey, Matt, is it as simple as Debo and Trent Williams are out and the Niners are losing because of it?
No, it's not. Yep. I mean, I think that's a contributing factor, but neither of those guys plays defense, for example. And the defense for the past 3 games has been terrible to begin the game. And to their credit, they've tightened up at halftime and they played better in the second half. But this is something that they're aware of, something that they set out to fix each week, and something that keeps rearing its ugly head. And it's very uncharacteristic. I mean, this is a Fred Warner-led defense. He's on these guys all the time, and yet they're not tackling well. They're falling behind in the game. Falling behind in the game means that they can't run the ball, and their quarterback, who is marvelous at times, still, at this stage in his career, needs to lean on a running game. And when he doesn't have that, he tends to make mistakes, and that's exactly what we've seen. Really, the last 2 games have been carbon copies of one another. Very similar the way those games have gone. And the bottom line is 3 losses in a row.
As Matt Barrows joins us from The Athletic, and he's brought to you by Stockton Honda, Northern California's #1 Honda dealer. So we've talked a little bit about the defense. You're alluding to the offense there, Matt. But, yeah, if we're kind of looking at this losing streak, I mean, the Niners are scoring 30 a game relatively easy. And here's 3 straight games where 17 has been a chore. What do you think the biggest issue has been for the offense and their lack of points?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not being able to lean on that running game like they usually do, and that has all sorts of ancillary effects. And they've turned the ball over. It was Christian McCaffrey fumble on the opening drive last week in Minnesota. They were deep in the red zone when that happened. They were first and goal at the 8-yard line when Purdy threw that pick to the linebacker. And it was a nice play by the linebacker, but just a bad decision by Purdy. Even if that ball is completed, as he noted afterwards, it would have been a legal man downfield because it was a broken play at that point. So they're giving away points, basically. And that's why, despite offensive success, yesterday was Brock Purdy's most prolific game in terms of passing yards, and also in terms of rushing yards. He set career highs in both. Yet, despite all those points, they're still winding up. I mean, despite all those yards, they're still winding up with 17 points.
Matt Barrows of The Athletic joining us. We talked a little bit last week about, is it appropriate to raise an eyebrow to Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator? You're 100% right, obviously, about the defense and the fact that something has happened or something has not happened, whatever it may be. This defense is not living up to its potential, certainly over the last 3 weeks. If it is still appropriate to you to raise an eyebrow, could you help us maybe connect? Because he's not out there sacking. He's not out there defending passes. But if we're going to raise an eyebrow, why? Why at Steve Wilks?
Well, I think it was definitely appropriate to raise an eyebrow after that Bengals game. I mean, I'm sorry, after the Vikings game, because the big issue there was that the pass rush and the coverage weren't tied together. Too many easy throws from Kirk Cousins. Whenever the pass rush looked like it was about to strike, Cousins had an easy outlet. I thought that they were better in that regard against Joe Burrow. I think if they're able to sack Joe Burrow on that opening drive, I feel like that game has a different tenor, because that's what happens. A defense starts making plays early, it gets more and more confident, and then it can have a tendency to snowball on the offense. Instead, he pulls an Eli Manning and wriggles free, and they march all the way down the field and get a touchdown. I haven't been able to go over the game a second time to sort of really kind of scrutinize that, but my sense was that they made the adjustments, that they weren't a blitz-heavy team, that they were, especially early in the game, putting pressure on Burrow and, seemingly were in a position to get him to the ground. Certainly more so than they were Kirk Cousins 6 days earlier. They just didn't always do that. And to me, that's the biggest issue to me. It's more of a personnel thing. You saw Cleveland Farrell really sort of become the second defensive end to Nick Bosa in this game, and he did a nice job. Well, they didn't go into the season thinking that he would be that. They thought he would be the sort of the base down guy, and I think he's emerging as their second best defensive end, which makes me think that they still really have room to add another player at that position. I mean, this is a team that really wants to have a terrific defensive line. It feels like everything else emanates from the defensive line, and I just don't think that defensive line has been as good as advertised, certainly during this 3-game skid.
Well, you just kind of alluded to it there, Matt. I was going to ask you about that. With these 3 losses in a row, you feel like there's an extra itch or a sense of urgency with the deadline tomorrow for John Lynch and that front office to say, look, we got a really good team, the core of a good team that's struggling. We need another piece or two at the deadline.
Yeah, I really do. And, people have been talking about defensive end or cornerback. I think either makes a lot of sense. And you look at it this way. If that defense is playing up to snuff, is more talented, is putting more pressure on quarterbacks, then, obviously you're not falling behind as quickly. Obviously you're able to lean on that running game a little bit more. And then by leaning on the running game, you're really helping Brock Purdy out. I mean, that's a very simplified way to look at it, but I think it's true. You're playing more like yourself. Christian McCaffrey is a factor in the backfield instead of having to use him as a slot receiver or out wide, those sorts of things. You're using everybody as they should be used. So I do think that another major piece would go a long way. I mean, we saw it last year. I mean, look what happened after they added McCaffrey. I don't know if anybody out there is at his level, but it does show you maybe Emmanuel Sanders back in 2019 is the better comparison. You bring in somebody like that, and it really can have a tremendous effect over the last 8 games. And I do believe that they're looking. I don't know how close they are, but I think that, like I said, this team, especially that defensive end position, to me, that would be the one where I think you could get a talented player who would have a real impact on the second half of the season.
Well, let me ask you just psychologically, because I completely agree with you. Obviously, on McCaffrey, I think Emmanuel Sanders is a great pull, and you're 100% correct. We never talked. I'm never going to ask you do you think they'll trade for this guy? But one of the rumors you hear is that yesterday's Eagles-Commanders game was going to help determine whether or not the Commanders would be sellers. They lost, although it was a very good game. And if the Commanders are, in fact, sellers, both Chase Young and Montez Sweat have been mentioned amongst others. So you look at Chase Young, which is kind of funny because bringing a guy like Chase Young over to the Niners defense I wouldn't say would be a McCaffrey-esque move just on defense, but certainly would just pile up the riches. Do you think psychologically, because one was a wide receiver in Sanders, one was a running back, these are skill positions, a guy like Chase Young could still have that same effect psychologically on the team and on the fans if they brought him over?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, because it's like what I said about the way the 49ers see defense, and they see defense, the defensive line as sort of the very kind of the top of the pyramid, if you will. The linebackers play better if the defensive line is firing. The secondary certainly does. So you would have somebody who, not as good as Nick Bosa. And I know Nick Bosa has been getting a lot of, bad looks, shall we say, recently. All this money, he had the holdout. He's only got a handful of sacks. He was really good at the beginning of the game. Pressure on just about every play. He wasn't hitting home, and that's a big issue. But he's doing his job. And if you could get somebody on the other side who's, even three quarters as good as Nick Bosa, then you would have something. And then you saw Eric Armstead really starting to kind of throw his weight around yesterday as well and be disruptive. I just think everybody along that defensive line would be benefiting from that. Chase Young would be tremendous. The question would be, would it be like Emmanuel Sanders? Would it be just a 2-month rental, and then that guy hits free agency in March? And my thought is that it would be that. And the 49ers would benefit, A, by having that rental, and B, by getting a pretty high compensatory pick for 2025. But that's the price you pay for trying to win a Super Bowl. It's that it's very short term. Your trade partner is getting a couple of good draft picks. You might get something in the mid rounds later on, but you're doing this because you think it's going to help you win a Super Bowl.
Matt, how do you think the Niners spend, the bulk of the time here this bye week and going into Jacksonville a week after this?
I mean, resting up for one. I mean, I was watching Trey Greenlaw throughout the game, and I was to a point where I thought this guy shouldn't even be out there because he's not performing at 100%, and he looks like an old man getting up after every hit. I think he's really beat up right now. And I think that's part of the defensive issue, a small part of it. But, he probably more so than anybody on defense really needs that rest. And obviously Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams needed on offense. I expect both of those guys to be back in Jacksonville when the season resumes. So that's first and foremost. I think that they're going to go back and look at the tape from the Bengals game and say, okay, this is how we want to call these games. Not a lot of blitzing. I thought that they were better when they played really close, tight coverage. The Bengals got bailed out early in the second half on a pass interference call when Charvarius Ward and Jamar Chase were locked one-on-one. But I sort of liked that battle. They were taking it to the Bengals, and I thought that Charvarius Ward was winning it at that point. Like I said, there was a pass interference call that gave the Bengals a first down and kind of sent them on their way. But I thought that approach was better than the kind of soft stuff that they were playing at times in the game. So I think it was all there on tape, a nice blueprint for this team for the second half. Adding a defensive end would help that blueprint along, but I think that they're going to kind of regroup and say, we can do this largely with the talent we have at hand. We've done it before, and all they need to do is look at 2021 and 2022 and see some really strong second half finishes, some momentum, and think, okay, that's the team that we need to be in mid-November and onward.
That's Matt Barrows of The Athletic. Hopefully the last loss he's going to have to break down all season for the 49ers. Matt, enjoy your bye week. We'll leave you alone. We'll reserve the right to check in, of course, if the Niners make a breaking trade, something crazy or whatever, but rest the typing fingers. Go to an island, maybe a beach, maybe ride a banana boat. I don't know what big time writers do in their bye week, but enjoy yourself.
You said ride, not write a banana boat.
No,
right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to write any banana boat novels. Okay.
Look, all I got to say is this: if you do go somewhere, you are laying out in the sun, please always remember the sunscreen, Matt.
I will. It's very important.
It's very important. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you, buddy.
All right. Talk to you later, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. Well,